Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. And my goodness, Oda is not pulling his punches anymore. We are certainly ramping up to what is going to be the pinnacle of where Elbaf hit, and it's all gonna get so chaotic. It is certainly going to be a very wild ride for the Straw Hats because I don't know what they're gonna do now, considering what they're up against. Because this chapter, Eam decides to act. And we've waited a long time to see what they are capable of. And it is within this chapter we finally get a display of power. And it is power far beyond we could have imagined. So we need to get talking about this. Without further ado, chapter 1150, Domi Reversi. So I think it's something like a Dominion reversion, I think is how the translation goes in the chapter. But pretty cool naming title to signify Eam's ability. And we come back to our cover story in Yamato's pilgrimage, and it is the return of Yasui's sword. The pilgrimage has been completed. We see Page One and Ulti alongside Yamato here, fulfilling the whole trip. So interesting to see if we're going to get maybe one or two more just of when they return, and then if they're setting out to sea as they had promised Luffy, is going to be interesting to see where I think Yamato ends up. But regardless, we need to get stuck in. So last we had left off, Gabon had appeared and had managed to wound Summer, and everyone was in awe of, it's Scott Gabon, like what we're going to do. And Chopper, our boy, was analysing. He was obsessed with understanding how it was that Gabon was able to damage Summer. And we see pretty quickly, Gabon just dealt with Summer. He decapitated them from the shoulders. He left them there. Summer was very wounded but wasn't completely killed because of the regenerative powers that the Holy Knights have got. So after that, he raced off because obviously he's got to go save the kids, he's got to go save Colin, and in the running from where he was there with Summer to there, we had just seen that Ange had indeed burned down the school. She had followed through on what Ja Rule had said because Ronja was ready to sort of give her life in order to keep the school safe, but Ja Rule just couldn't do it in the end. He gave the order, and we see Killingham deal the final flaming arrow blow to the library, and everywhere is now being engulfed in flames. One of Elbaf's greatest weaknesses, considering it's a tree. But on that very sad note, we had come back then to Gabon, reaching the kids, seeing Gunko there, and Colin just couldn't hold back his excitement. He proclaimed that his dad had arrived. Gunko heard this immediately and reacted, held Colin specifically at a needle point, I'd say, but it was more of like a lance. And in the moment that Gabon was ready to strike, the 1 second he needed, he'd used advanced observation and saw that he was too late, that Gunko would follow through and kill Colin. So Gabon let go of his axes. He was like, I give up, I surrender, it's over. And he is pierced by 3 arrows and sent plummeting to the underworld by Gunko. And it's in that moment when Colin is screaming out for his dad, watching his dad pretty much get a very serious wound. I wouldn't say he's dead, it's Gabon. Come on. Seriously wounded. and it unlocks a memory in Gunko, a memory specifically of her father that she herself was confused by, that she'd had this memory to begin with, like where did it come from? And it was a memory of her father, Brooke, saying about how he was going to set out to sea to be a pirate. And there is like a moment of recognition that she'd just seen Brooke, and Brooke himself was like, I can't like quite understand that it's you, isn't it? And she is racing to go and reunite with Brooke. And all of a sudden, a voice. And Gunko is hit by some wave and becomes possessed or taken control of by Eam. And it is there that Eam flexes their unparalleled ability and is just able to control Gunko like this. We don't really know the mechanics of it yet, but just instantaneously takes over Gunko, is speaking to Summer and to Killingham like a sort of communication relay between the God's Knights, and talks about this is the dominion of God. And even though Marie Joie is currently a sea of flames, Eam needed to take a more personal approach in taking over Elbaf. It's more vital that the Giants are on their side than whatever's happening in the Holy Land right now. So we don't know who's attacking Marie Joie yet, but we'll certainly find out, I guess. But we pick up here with the Giants reaching the kids walking, and it is here that we see like the reaction to, you know, Gunko flying. And as these group of Giants reach the kids who are still under the influence of, you know, walking, we see that absolute carnage breaks out, and we see Gunko or Eam emit a giant hacky wave. Like black lightning just absolutely tears through the whole area here, and giant kids all get knocked unconscious. Like everyone is down. The kids still seem to be stood up under the influence of the devil fruits and, you know, the Gunko arrow, so they're still being forced to walk, but they are back unconscious. And we see that the wave erupts, and the Straw Hats are still reacting to Summer reforming. And he's like, well, that guy's like still alive. And we hear Eam's voice saying, you know, round up those urchins, like wrap it up here, Summer. And he's like, at once, my lord, of course, like almost afraid of Eam. So what we see here is the Straw Hats talking about, you know, where's Luffy, Zoro and Sanji at, like the main fighters, like what are they doing? They'd gone down to the realm of the dead with Hyrule, and like, of course, of all the times they go down, now is when it happens. And Jinbei's like, you know, that woman looks unrecognisable now, like what is going on over there? And we see Robin struggling with the thorns, like she is fighting because she's like, I can't just sit here any longer, it's unbearable. And the thorns are like digging deeper into her skin, but she still seems to be putting up a real struggle while everyone else is just bandaged up. So if she breaks out, it'll be cool. It's what she's going to do following it. Is she going to be the one to try and communicate with Luffy and the others? Or is she going to try and stop Summer or put the fire out in some way? I could see that happening, but we don't see what the rest of the Straw Hats are doing because it's now the Giants' turn, and what we see is incredible. All the Giants, the Giant Warrior Pirates, you know, Dory, Broggy and the lot are rushing, and we see just a shot of Ja Rule's face feeling the wave of Haki going out, and we see some like ritualistic circle that we've seen before, and we see Gunko in a very, very devil-like form. You know, pitchfork, tail, these black wings, this very like demon look. And Eve is talking about, you know, this rebellion that they're trying, and you know they're not gonna let it happen, and says to Killingham, like, what are these dream demons? Is this all they amount to? And then Killingham's like shitting himself. He's like, oh my lord, you know, this is just, you know, there are still fishes open. I can just immediately resummon them. They have no concept of death. You know, I just need to give them the signal, and they were born from the nightmares of this island, and they can reform once more. And we see that, like, they are panicking with Eames present here. Like, it's probably not very often they interact with Eames, but they know of Eames and clearly Eames' ability. And we see, you know, Eames talk about, you know, we're establishing authority here. One capable strike to round up these, you know, problem adolescents. And, you know, some is agreeing, like, just as you say, you know, if they don't have a king, we can get them on our side. And we see that it is indeed Dory and Broggy who reach Eam first. And it is, you know, Broggy who grabs a hold of Gunko, like, full grasp. And she's like, blue ogre, Dory, red ogre, Broggy, you know, I am going to command you to take dominion of this island. And it's like, henceforth, you will be the kings of Elbaf. And it's like, what are you on about? Like, all this chaos is your fault. You know, you're one of the God's Knights. And all the giants run past. Broggy is the one who's holding Gunko or Eam. And he's like, how many kids have you taken? You know, you're going to pay for this. And Eam summons a grimoire from, like, literally just thin air. And it's from this book that she begins to sort of say, you know, Broggy, you are going to go and meet with Jarul. You are going to take his head, raise it up high, and proclaim that you and Broggy, Dory and Broggy, are going to be kings of Elbaf. And we see that Eam summons a blade and a double-barreled shotgun out of nowhere from the book. Eam is able to manifest items from this grimoire of incredible power. And we see that, you know, Dory's not having any of it, but instantaneously the dagger is pushed into Broggy's hand so that Gunko or Eam can, like, fly out, and just takes hold of the shotgun and blows the wrist off of Broggy. Like, hand gets severed off. There was a massive hole in his wrist, and they're just like, you know, accept my ungodly power. I am not going to tolerate this. And as he's in this freaking out, he begins to sink into the floor in these, like, flames, and we see Eam flip their hands over and say the command words of Domi Reversi, or Black Dominion Reversion. And we see that, like, Broggy's body is, like, split, and his top half gets flipped upside down underground, and we see his legs are, like, stuck on, like, upside down, and the flames take over, and we see a demonic Broggy appear. This Broggy takes the size of an ancient giant. All the giants now look up and go, why has our captain just been turned into a demon? Why is he so much bigger now? What's happening? Why is the chief so scary? And we see, like, his eyes glow. He just completely annihilates these giants here, because they're like, he's never going to hurt us. One-shots them and is like, I am so powerful. This is exhilarating. I can do anything. And he goes and takes on and immediately deals with Dory. And we see that Dory then gets a demonic form as well. He gets taken over and he stands at this ancient giant level. And I also love that Broggy, even though he got his wrist exploded, his arm is still attached like to his like big sort of weapon that he's being given. So his arms like sort of free floating. And we see everyone is reacting, but other giants also start undergoing this transformation. And Eam just watches as each individual giant in this area takes on the form of a demonic ancient giant. And it is a very short chapter because we're at the end of a beautiful double page spread of all of the monsters again. It is like paralleled where we first saw the dream monsters across the trees. This time it is all the dream monsters and all of the giant warrior pirates as demonic ancient giants with these black wings, these glaring fangs and red eyes, these spiked barbed weapons, pitchforks. They are here to come and take Ja Rule's head and declare themselves the kings of Elbaf. This is the true power of a giant that has been awakened. And Eam just like sort of ponders that they don't want this place to be laid to ruin. They know the power and strength of the giant and that they are to be ruled, not killed. So we see that all of the giants are reacting and Dory and Broggy like bear witness, you know, to this. And Eam is like, this is the crucible of war. And we see that everyone is freaking out. The other giants are like trying to run away. They're afraid. And they're like, we have to run. We have to go. They're acting strange. Run away. And even though this is so cool, Ja Rule finishes the chapter in possibly the coolest way. He just glares at them and says, warriors do not know the meaning of the word run. And just stares down the oncoming threat here. Oh, my guy. I mean, something we need to talk about. This sort of demonic capturing that Eam is now able to do. Perform a contract to empower someone to these demonic powers. Way back when in Impel Down, there was people that were demoned away, as it was called. They were taken by some unknown force, and we thought at the time it was just people being taken to the 5.5, you know, Ivankov's hidden room level. What if it was just Eam finding potentially strong warriors or pirates down there and just converting them slowly into an army? There's a very demonic-esque aesthetic and presence. There was the demon gods. To Impel Down, you know, Magellan looked like a devil, same to the other prison jailers. What if that whole aesthetic was just obviously for Eam's powers of awakening, of being a demon themselves or a devil? So there's a lot here. But to have no contest in any respect, Eam is just able to flip someone over with this power and they become subservient to Eam and carry out the wish of what they've declared. And that grimoire, you know, we've seen now that Luffy's all about the power of imagination with Gear 5. Is Eam obviously able to just imagine or conjure anything from this book? Because I think it's one of those things where it's not Eam's power, but it's the book's power that Eames now been able to get a hold of, this like magic. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see where we go from here, and at what point is Luffy and the others gonna come up to deal with this threat now and this problem. But we shall see. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. I will see you guys next time. Bye.